ask you a question. Did you know Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Thor, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America? Yes, these are the people of superheroes that we truly love and admire for. But did you know that they are first began on a printed paper? Yes, they are all started in the world of comic books. We are going to talk about the age of comic book, which is from the very beginning of the first release published comics until the modern age in the world of comic book stories. Let's talk about the age of comics, starting in the Platinum Age from the 1896 to the 1938. This features the Yellow Kid in Marparton Flat is considered as the first comic book. It features a black and white reprint of the popular newspaper comic in the full-color glossy comic book. This includes the Jammer Kid and the Happy Hooligan and many more comic strips from the newspaper. In the 1922, Comic Monthly was the first monthly comic book and it features the reprint of the daily newspaper comic strip. In the 1993, the first colored comic book is Funnies in Parade. In February 1985, DC Comics published their first ever comic book consists of completely original materials with its called New Fun Number 1. Same year in October, Jeremy Siegel and Joe Sutter has joined working the New Fun. And in June 1938, it began the golden age of comics. This year was Superman first appeared in Action Comic number 1, and it was followed by Batman in Detective Comics issue number 27. In October 1939, Marvel Comics released their comic book issue by their predecessor, timely publication, which is Marvel Comics number 1. This issue includes the appearance of the well-known Marvel characters such as the Human Torch, Angel, and Prince Namor. Captain Marvel of Farewell Comics, The Flash, and Green Lantern of DC Comics was released, debuted in the 1940s, followed by the iconic character Captain America and Wonder Woman was later released. Silver Age of Comic in 1935. Frederick Wareham, author of the book Seduction of the Innocent, said that on this book, comic book of all time were corrupting the youth of America. He also wrote that Superman is representing facial ideas, Batman and Robin promoting homosexual lifestyle, and Wonder Woman was a lesbian with a bondage fixation. In the same year, comic book publisher create the Comic Code Authority. This can help in order to self-regulate their industry and to prevent government involvement in film production. They must follow the rules or the comic or on the risk is going undistributed. The following year, Atlas Comic became Marvel Comic, and they also released their comic issue of the Fantastic Four. Next year, Spider-Man, Hulk, and Thor make their debut appearance followed by Iron Man and the team of X-Men. In the Bronze Age, the comic was signalized to more realistic style within comic book as a younger generation artist, replacing the artists and writers of the 1930s to 1940s and entered new phases in the comic book industry like Neil Adams, John Byrne, George Perez, Frank Miller, and many other writers. And it becomes more violent and even matured content of the stories, like in the shocking murder of Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker's or Spider-Man's girlfriend by the hands of Green Goblin in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 121 to 122. This genre was shown the heroes are relief upon someone almost in any changes. It was revolutionary to illustrate and brutally murder of the innocent characters alongside the ultimate failure of the anticipated savior. In 1971, the Comic Code Authority planned to relax some standards in the comic book like vampire, ghouls, and werewolf shall be permitted to be used when handled in the classic traditions. Became more numerous in 1970s. The team up of Green Lantern and Green Arrow was mostly famous during the collaboration as they fought against racism, pollution, social injustice, and the issue where Green Arrow confronted his sidekick Speedy uses of heroin addiction, while Iron Man came to terms with his alcoholism, and DC and Marvel introduced a slew of mindless superheroes such as Storm, Black Lightning, Blade, and Green Lantern John Stewart. This era was the theme of the story that are all darker, adult-oriented, political, and controversial theme in the comic industry, and it aims to attach the more matured audience in reading a comic book. Kicking off the dark age of comic book is the beginning of Crisis of Infinite Earth, a monumental series. The idea was to have a multiple alternate realities brought together to make one consistent reality, as in concealing how the 1940s Green Lantern Alan Scott can exist in the same reality as Green Lantern Hal Jordan in the 1960s. To wit, the Justice Society of the 1940s with their Green Lantern could exist at the same time as the Justice League of the 1960s with a different Green Lantern. To solve some of the inconsistencies, certain major characters were killed off and characters long out to play were brought back with new storylines. In the 1980s through the early 1990s, the character of anti-hero were popular, from the story of Alan Moore's Watchmen, where the world looks down on once mighty superhero, from Frank Miller's Batman The Dark Knight Returns, where a 55-year-old Batman has retired from crime fighting, leaving criminals in terrorizing Gotham City. Readers witnesses Superman's dying, Batman becoming critically injured, and Green Lantern Hal Jordan slaughtered his fellow Green Lantern. And let's head up to the last stage, the modern age of comics, from the 1996 through the present time. The publication of Alex Ross' Kingdom Come in 1996, which hanked back from the optimistic and strength of the Silver Age superhero, marks as the beginning of the modern age. During this period, comic book publishers attempted to rectify their mistakes in creating learning business plan to putting more effort in the fewer number of projects. Of the motion picture Batman and Robin in 1987, superhero film will put on ice a retooling in 2000. Modern successful of X-Men helped put the popularity of the superhero movie back on track, and following the 2002 movie Spider-Man, which became one of the notable icon of the superhero. The age of comic book first began in the Platinum Age, in which the start of the comic book publication. Then, from the Golden Age, was the start of the popularity of the superhero themed comic book, and it always began with the addition of another comic characters. In the Silver Age was created the Comic Code Authority, and followed by adding more superhero characters. From the Bronze Age is the theme of the comic book are more realistic and promoting the horror genre. In the Dark Age, this age was began of more darker theme than the before, because it's suitable for the mature audience. And from the Modern Age was started the comic book stories and characters getting in the world of the movie industry. In general, comic book publishers and writers are having a hard time in developing a story and creating a character which can make an audience fun, but they are having fun. They create a younger and older audience notice and creating a memorable thing until the present day. And this ends up to our lecture for today. I hope you understand everything and you learn a lot from the world of comic book. So, in the last word, my name is Paul Urriza.